What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com. Down there we like magic, and yeah, I'm wearing the same shirt from last night's deck tech. I didn't sleep. I almost never do. As I've said before, sleep is for the weak. And I'm going to be expected to sleep anyway when I knew there were going to be a bunch of new Amonkhet spoilers today. It's like Christmas. It's the first official day, officially, of Amonkhet spoilers starting right now. And we got to see some pretty good stuff today that people are already arguing about. So let me go ahead and take you through it. Hey, you want to see a cool red 1-drop that's either the savior of red aggro or a terrible card? Depending on who you ask. Here it is right here. Check this thing out. This is Flameblade Adept, which sounds like it was already the name of a magic card, but Flameblade Adept is just 1 red for a Jackal Warrior. It's a 1/2 with Menace. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, Flameblade Adept gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Looking at a couple of these preview cards today, all I can say is that Noose Constrictor is looking better all the time. But let's talk about the actual card here. Now, 1 mana for a 1-power guy is not usually great in an aggro deck, but again, tell that to Monastery Swiftspear, which this is not. But still, in a format full of like madness, obviously this seems pretty good. In a format with what's hopefully going to be a bunch of cards that cycle, this seems okay too. Although, I don't like the idea of like playing this turn 1, cycling something turn 2, and swinging for 2. That's probably bad. Like, you didn't get anything on board, you know. I'm not sure about that, but cycling stuff on, like, turn 4 or 5 and making this a little bit bigger seems okay to me. But really, the value here lies in the discarding, the word discarding on the card, because we got a bunch of stuff in Standard that lets us discard cards, from Cathartic Reunion to Tormenting Voice, all the way to Collective Brutality and a million other cards. Lightning Axe, for instance. Noose Constrictor already brought that up. So I think that it shouldn't be too hard to make this thing pretty big in the first couple of turns of the game. And this obviously goes into like a really heavy aggro deck, so all we really care about is the first few turns of the game, up to like turn 4 or 5, you know. Like once you get into top deck mode, the card doesn't look great, but hey, like if you cycle something that you top deck, then you still get a 2-power 1-drop that has Menace. That's something, at least. So I like the card an awful lot, and I think that it probably has more play than some people are giving it credit for, although some people are also saying this card is fantastic. Like, the community isn't 50-50 split. I think more people are saying this card is good than bad. And I think that it definitely looks pushed. They didn't have to put the Menace on it, obviously. They didn't even have to give it that second point of toughness, but in this case, it's Liliana-proof, and they got to do some work with Walking Ballista to actually kill the thing. So I think that it's kind of pushed in a few ways, and I think this will be a standard red 1-drop. While we're talking about mono red, there are actually a few cards spoiled today that signal the possibility of a decent, maybe even budget mono red aggro deck in the format. So let me show you this right here as well, which I like an awful lot. This is On-Crop Crasher right here. He's 3 mana. That's 2 and a red for a 3/2 Minotaur Warrior with haste. You may exert On-Crop Crasher as it attacks. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. Now, just in case you haven't seen Exert yet for whatever reason, this basically just means that you can choose to swing in and get this ability, but you have to leave the creature tapped on your next untap step. Now, this kind of reminds me of a cheaper version of like a Goblin Heelcutter, which was a really good card. Also, like Voldaren Duelist is probably what it's closer to, but it's cheaper than Duelist as well. So I think this could actually see some constructed play, both of those cards. Well, actually, Duelist saw a lot of limited play, and Heelcutter actually saw some constructed play. I think this will go the way of Heelcutter and see some constructed play, or at least people will try it in mono red aggro decks. Because you don't, even if you exert it and you don't get to untap it on your 4th turn, you might, like, not care that much, you know. All you're trying to do is come down with haste. I love this has haste. Come down with haste on turn 3, keep a guy from blocking, get the 3 damage in with this, plus the damage from your 1 and 2 drops. I want to point out, by the way, how good this is if you don't have to exert it the turn it comes into play. If for whatever reason, like, you're playing this turn 3 on the play, and they don't have a creature yet, or a good blocking creature, well, at that point, you don't have to exert it. You can just wait until they play something that you don't want to block, or when they actually do play their first creature. And then you can exert it on that attack, on your next attack step, and basically, like, negate them having played a creature at all. That's pretty good on, like, either naked or very underdeveloped boards. Long story short, I'm probably a little bit more excited about this than I should be, but the stats are there. 3 mana, 3 power, haste, keeps a guy from blocking. Like, mono red aggro decks love exactly cards like this, so I would not be surprised to see at least some sparing play, and I'm going to try it all day. Let's take a break from talking about beaten face for a second and go the opposite direction Talk about gaining some life. Here's Anointer Priest right here. Anointer Priest is 2 mana. That's 1 and a white for a 1/3 human cleric. With Embalm 4, that's 3 and a white. Whenever a creature token enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So is it good enough for Soul Sisters in Modern? No, probably not, honestly. I hate the word token on this card. I would have liked if it was just a 2 mana Soul Warden that had Embalm. That would be fine too, but this is what we got. And some people have been pointing out that this works with cat combo and standard to gain you infinite life, but you're probably going to be swinging in for infinite damage that same turn, so I don't know why you'd need the infinite life. Although, there is a really, really meta reason for that, I guess. Like, Damping Pulse is something that's been coming out of sideboards and like the Temur Tower deck and a couple other things to combat cat combo. It gives all their guys -1, -0. Look at that, they can't deal damage to you with Felidar Guardians. Well, at this point, you could maybe put a Anointer Priest in your sideboard specifically to combat Dampening Pulse, but there's like 100 other things you could put in the sideboard, so I don't think an Anointer Priest goes in cat combo either. The question is then, where does this go? Well, in Standard, we've got, green-white tokens, we've got a red-white tokens deck too, although I'm not really sure how much they want to gain a bunch of life. I don't know, green-white tokens might want to so it can stay in the game, but right now life gain is just not incredible because we have a combo that can just kill you no matter how much life you have. So I just don't know if Anointer Priest is going to find a home. I like that she works with herself. Like, the token comes back in and the token starts giving you life for tokens. Like, oh, that's cool. I think this card is like really flavorful and neat. But I'm just not really sure that it has a home outside of possibly Commander decks. It could definitely go in some Commander decks. A lot of people call this card fake, Dusk Dawn, but it looks more and more every day like this is a faux shiz card because we saw our first official card with Aftermath today. Here it is right here. This is Destined and Lead. First of all, I just want to point this out. It looks like the word 2 should be in the middle of all these. Dusk 2 Dawn, Destined 2 Lead, so that's cute. But anyway, the Destined half of it, the one you're casting from your hand, is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. The half that you'll cast out of your graveyard, Lead, is 4 mana. That's 3 and a green for a sorcery. And it's got Aftermath. You can only cast this from your graveyard, then you have to exile it. All creatures able to block the target creature this turn do so. So you get a lure. Well, this looks pretty silly in Sealed and Draft. Like, this looks like a very, very fine limited card that I don't think we'll see any constructed play. It is storming really, really hard outside. But anyway, I don't think this will see any constructed play. Although +1/+0 and indestructible is pretty good. It doesn't seem bad at all, But like, what is it? Touch of Vitality, I think it is. That doesn't see any standard play. But this one also has a little extra play in being able to put a lure on one of your creatures and possibly get in for Alpha Strike on like stalemates and stuff. Like, there's a lot of play in this card, and I like that about what appears to be the Aftermath card so far. One of the things that we asked about Aftermath cards when we first saw Dusk to Dawn was, hey, are these going to be different colors depending on which end you're playing at the time? Turns out yes, and that's really exciting as far as the design space allowed by that. So I can't wait to see what else they do with this, although I'm not particularly excited by this card. Here's a super dope card right here, or at least I think it's really good. This is Crocodile of the Crossing, and it's got really cool art. It's 4 mana, it's 3 and a green, for a 5/4 Crocodile with haste. That's cool. And when Crocodile of the Crossing enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. I actually really like this card, and that might just be because I really liked Emperor Crocodile out of like Urza's Destiny a long time ago. This, I'm not sure if it's as good as Imp Croc, but it does have haste, which might make it like way better. It's entirely possible. The way you want to look at this is basically a 4 mana 4/3 with haste. You can put a -1/-1 counter on one of your guys. You can do that, it's fine. Now if you're playing Snake, you probably don't want to do that, but still, seems like at least a decent card. Will come down and swing haste with at least 4 power, if not 5, as early as turn 3. That seems great. So, like if you have a mana dork on turn 2 or something. So that seems great too. I just think the haste on this thing makes it look kind of pushed to me, actually. Like, it can come down like really early and just unexpectedly eat walkers. That seems awesome. Like, you can on purpose put a creature into your graveyard that you want in your graveyard for whatever reason, We've got Embalm in this format, so it's a little bit more palatable to kill your own guys if you have to, So there's just a lot of play in this card. And I think that it looks really cool, and I just kind of like crocodiles as a creature type, so I'm also hyped for that reason. I just really, really, really like this card. I like the cut of its jib, I like the look, I like the functionality, and I think that it might be a lot better than people are saying it is. Even people who say it might be halfway decent, now I'm saying this thing might possibly be constructed playable. It's a close call, and it probably, at the end of the day, won't see a whole lot of constructed play, but I'll reserve the right to say, like, this could be just good enough. Let's take a break from talking about, like, obviously pushed creatures to talk about a super weird build-around enchantment that kind of reminds me of another weird build-around enchantment in the format. This right here is Nest of Scarabs. It's 3 mana, that's 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. Well, this looks pretty good with the crocodile we were just talking about, right? But anyway, this kind of reminds me of Crawling Sensation. You know, it's a 3 mana splashable enchantment that when you do a thing, you get 1/1s. But the cool thing to point out is that Crawling Sensation would only give you basically 1/1 creature per turn the first time a land went to the graveyard. This gives you as many -1/-1 counters as you put on a thing. And you can do it multiple times a turn if you have multiple things that put -1/-1 counters on a creature. So, like, this looks cool right here. A very interesting build around that. If we see some more stuff in Amonkhet that puts -1/-1 counters on stuff, which we will, that seems to be sort of a running of sub-theme of the set, then this card could actually be a really, really fun and cheap build around that could be somewhat effective. Like, if you're putting -1/-1 counters on stuff, you're removing things off the board, or at least making them way smaller, while getting creatures of your own. So, actually, I think this might... It's not going to see any play, don't get me right. It's not going to see any real constructed play. But it might be a super, super fun and somewhat effective budget build-around. So I cannot wait to try and make something with this. I'm too excited about it. Alright, so we've been talking about nothing but, like, at least decent or cards that we can speculate on and stuff like that. Like, well, this could be seeing constructed play, who knows? But now I'm going to talk about a bad card because bad cards exist, and they were spoiled, so I got to talk about them. This right here is Dejeru? I'm just call it Jeru's Resolve. I'm going to assume that D is silent. It's 1 white mana for an instant. Untap target creature, prevent all damage that would be dealt to it this turn, and you can cycle it for 2 generic. Now, I know I just said this card is bad, but it actually does have some play in limited environments where it's going to go kind of well with Exert. You know, I could see that. That's the one situation. This might be okay. And the thing about cards with cycling is that they're always sort of somewhat playable because you don't have to actually play them for their effect. You just play them. You just pay 2 and draw a card in this case. Cycling makes almost completely unplayable cards sort of kind of playable. And at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to see any constructed play. 0 constructed play. But it does look like an interesting either sideboard or like 23rd card for aggro strategies in limited, especially if you've got a few emerge creatures. Did I just say emerge? Exert creatures. Now let's talk about a card that's either good or bad. I'm not really sure. This is Innoketra's Name right here. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Zombies you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. That is so weird to see on a white card. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so the zombies in this set are mostly white. Like when you embalm a creature, it becomes white. Like the token is white. So it makes sense in the context of the set, but it is still really weird to see zombies get this special bonus on a white card. And actually, it's pretty good for 2 mana if you've got a bunch of zombies out. Like, I can't wait to try black-white zombies. That's going to be fun, too. But if you've got zombies out, this is only 2 mana for a 2-power buff to all your guys, which isn't terrible. And, like, even your guys that aren't zombies get a boost, too. So, I can see this seeing, like, some sealed play, some limited play. It looks like a decent stalemate breaker, you know. And if you've built a deck that has, like, 3 or 4 embalm guys, like this just gets even better. So I could see it seeing some limited play, but I'm not really sure about anything outside of that, other than like Commander Zombie decks. But Commander Zombie decks probably won't play a whole lot of white. We'll see. We'll see. I don't think the card's super special, but I think the card's fun. The more I think about it, I think they just printed this card to screw with you. Like, because I'm pretty sure that everyone sees zombies you control get a boost on a white card, and they're like, what? Like, even knowing that there are zombies in white in this set. But anyway, we should probably move on. Up next, we're going to take a look at a creature enchantment that might actually be playable and isn't called Griff's Boon. Imagine that. This right here is Cartouche of Solidarity, and get used to that silly sounding word Cartouche. You'll see why in a minute. It's just 1 white mana for an aura with the type Cartouche, by the way, and it enchants only a creature you control. When Cartouche of Solidarity enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with Vigilance. And enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has first strike. A couple of things I want to clear up about this card. First of all, it is Cartouche, not Cartouche. Or Cartouches. That's not at all. Cartouche is the proper pronouncing there. Like cartoons, but with like cartoon douche. That's how you pronounce that. Cartouche. But the other thing I want to clear up is something I keep hearing on like message boards and stuff. This is not an effective 1 mana 2/2 first strike Vigilance. You can't do that. You can't just like play it, put the thing into play, and then enchant the 1/1 Vigilance with this, thus getting a 2/2 first strike Vigilance for just 1 mana. You can't do that because the card would be very, very rare and kind of broken. That'd be like the best 1-drop in Magic history. So, or one of them at least. You can't do that. You cannot do that. But what you can do, at the very least, is have a 1 mana 1/1 Vigilance, which isn't the worst thing ever, you know, and you can get +1/+1 in first strike on another guy. All of that for 1 mana, and the Cartouche cycle will be synergistic with at least one other card, if not more cards, probably more cards, as we see spoiler season roll out here. So there's reason to play Cartouches. You get a 1/1 Vigilance just for paying 1 mana. That could be worse. And you get to give a guy a buff and first strike. That's a lot of stuff for just 1 mana. This actually looks like a pretty decent card, and we're bound to see a cycle of Cartouches that'll all do probably interesting stuff. So can't wait to see what else is in store for this cycle. Well, in the meantime, though, I think this is actually like almost playable. We'll have to see what else happens with these, you know, this cycle of cards here, and what else Cartouches, you know, will matter for. But in the time being, I think this is at least a pretty decent card in Limited. And yeah, people are saying like, oh, you still get 2 for 1. You actually don't. You actually kind of don't, because you'll put this on a creature, and yeah, they can kill that creature, and you'll lose the enchantment and the creature. That's like getting 2 for 1, but you still got a 1/1 Vigilance. So you technically didn't get 2 for 1. It's weird. But anyway, I think this card is much, much better than it looks at first glance, and is pauper playable. It's a common, so that might also be something to look at. Well, it wouldn't be a new Magic set without a new Threaten spell, right? I mean, at this point, that's kind of what we're looking at. So here's Limits of Solidarity right here. It's 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery with Threaten. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. But this one you can cycle for 2 mana. Threaten abilities like this are always kind of decent and Limited, at least out of the sideboard, but this one you can feel a little bit more comfortable playing in your sealed deck in the main deck, because you can just cycle it when you don't need it. The ability to cycle a Threaten card is actually pretty great, because there will be like lots of times where you don't need this effect right now, but you'd really like to draw a card. So I like that they did this. Good on you, Wizards, but I mean, end of the day, it's a Threaten effect. I don't have too much to say about it. We've seen these for 25 years almost. We've actually already seen a thing that works with Cartouches. This right here is Trial of Knowledge, and I would hope and imagine that all of the trials will probably work with Cartouches, but that remains to be seen. But anyway, Trial of Knowledge is 4 mana. That's 3 and a blue for an enchantment. When Trial of Knowledge enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. When a Cartouche enters the battlefield under your control, return Trial of Knowledge to its owner's hand. Okay, so it's like Oath of Jace, but it costs 1 more mana, but you don't have to discard 2. You just discard 1. Cool, you pay 1 more mana for not having to discard a card, and it's got some functionality with Cartouches. You play a Cartouche for just like the 1 mana, and the one that we know about at least, for just like 1 mana, you can pop this back to your hand, play it again, draw 3 more cards, discard 1. This will work with like Delirium. This will work with Madness and stuff, like any graveyard strategies, Reanimation. Like, there's a lot of cool things that you could probably do with this, but 4 mana seems very, very steep. So I'm not sure at the end of the day how much play it actually sees, but it's cool. You know, when Oath of Jace rotates, this might see some play, although Oath of Jace isn't seeing all the play or anything either. So, you know, is this slightly worse, or at least a side grade of a card that already doesn't see a whole lot of play? Yes, but if Cartouches are any good, or we see a strategy that works really, really well with this, and again, we already have a couple that do, then this might see some play. Save the big one, and the one that's caused the most argument on the day. for last. This here is Hazoret. Hazoret the Fervent. He's 4 mana, that's 3 in a red for a 5/4 legendary god with indestructible and haste. Hazoret the Fervent can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. And you can pay 3, that's 2 in a red, discard a card. Hazoret deals 2 damage to each opponent. Well, the number 1 comment I've seen about this card today is that it's not Purphoros, but I don't know why people wanted to just reprint Purphoros. You know, like people are like, Purphoros is way better. Like, actually, these are 2 completely different cards that are made to look similar. Yeah, they both cost 4. They both have ways of dealing damage to the opponent. In this case, they both, you know, are indestructible gods. Like, yeah, there are similarities between the cards on purpose, and you're probably meant to draw some comparisons, but they're not functionally the same card at all. Purphoros is a much grindier card than this is. This is a perfect curve topper for mono red aggro, which video comes full circle. We were talking about that at the beginning. People have been saying like, oh, you got to empty your hand by turn 4. No, you don't. You got to have 1 card or less in your hand by turn 4, which is much easier to pull off. This looks also, by the way, good with Noose Constrictor. Point that out. It's really good with that 1-drop that we saw at the beginning of the video. That seems cool too, you know. So I know that 3 mana isn't, I mean, that's kind of steep for a discard a card ability if you want to get anything with madness in on top of it. But you can play like Fiery Temper on top of this for just the next 1 extra mana. That's cool, you know, and it's got haste. Like, if you're top decking, if you're in top deck mode, like anywhere past the 4th turn, you know, then you can play this, immediately swing with it in most aggro decks. So, like, the card looks really, really interesting to me. I think it is much better than a lot of people are giving it credit for. A lot of people are just comparing it to Purphoros and saying it sucks. Yeah, because Purphoros saw all of the play in the world in that format. Purphoros himself saw sparing but some play when Theros was in the format in Standard. It did see some play, some, but not all of the play. And this is the same. It looks like it could see some play, but not all of the play, and be an important card for a very specific deck. In this case, a mono red aggro build, or any hardline aggro deck that's looking to empty its hand really, really, really fast. And mono red aggro has the ability to do that right now. It's got a bunch of stuff that discards cards. It's got a bunch of stuff that's really low on the curve, and you can just play your hand out in the first couple of turns. And then, if you can play this on turn 4, or just top deck it anytime after that, then you're immediately swinging with an indestructible 5-power guy for fairly cheap. That's also a mana sink and synergizes with itself. You can just discard cards until you only have 1 or 0 cards in your hand, and suddenly this guy's online. So what else do you want? Like, really good for mono red aggro, decent in madness strategies, synergizes with itself, comes down with haste to eat up walkers or unexpectedly deal 5 to the face, tops the curve in an aggro deck. There's just so many good things about Hazoret. Like, I'm not having it today with the hate on this card. Having it, Hazoret, that was a stretch, but I made it work, maybe. All I'm saying is, see the forest for the trees. I know the card is not Purphoros, but just forget that Purphoros exists, and remember that we're in a completely different Standard environment right now than we were when Purphoros was in the format. This card is good. This card is good. Anyway, that's all we've got for Amonkhet spoilers from this morning. There may be some more tonight. Wizards likes to slip them in like either 9 or 10 o'clock or really late at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Either way, we're going to be coming your way with more spoilers really soon, either later on today or tomorrow afternoon. So sub if you're new to make sure you get all that. You can like this video if you like my spoiler analysis, or even if you didn't, I just like you to like the video. It helps me out a lot. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, and check out the deck tech from this morning. Mono Blue Paradox Engine for just like $65. It's a super, super fun deck. Link to it right here. Anyway, I'm done for now, but spoiler season is now officially kicked off, which means that I really seriously will not be sleeping for the next like 2 or 3 weeks here. But you'll notice it, by the way. People will start noticing it every spoiler season. Like, halfway through spoiler season, I start looking tireder and tireder in every video. But it's worth it to bring you guys these spoilers and like just talk about them, get my feelings out about them. Helps me therapeutically. So, I can't wait to talk about all these spoilers. It's my favorite time of the year. It like literally is Christmas for me. So, super excited to start doing spoiler videos again, and can't wait to do more. I'm Deb from SBMTG. I'll see you guys very soon. Thanks for watching, my wizards.